Messiah's family have been waiting for some sort of justice to be served for nearly 2 years, with one of the main suspects in their eyes being turned free. But with the new ruling on one-man grand juries, that suspect is now being retried with first-degree murder.
They've recharged Deshaun Davis with charges after they dismissed the charges.
That is the result of one-man grand juries no longer being valid in Michigan after a recent decision from the Michigan Supreme Court. Up until that point, one of the 4 suspects investigators believed to be involved in 3-year-old Messiah Williams' death was turned free. Now, nearly 2 years after Messiah's death, the courts have to revisit the charges.
I'd say it had to be a good thing, because to make it bad, it would be dropping the charges and letting them out on the streets again. And by my understanding, none of them are out on the street.
This is the letter sent to Messiah's grandparents notifying them that changes are taking place. Deputy Chief Assistant Prosecuting Attorney of Genesee County, John Potberry, released a statement to Mid-MichiganNow stating in part, "This case is in the pretrial phase in district court. There will be continued discussions with the defense and consultation with the victim's family as we move toward a preliminary exam date," end quote. What do you think and or hope will come out of the retrial?
The truth.
Yes.
Consequences. There should be consequences for your action. And that's exactly what Messiah's law is about, is consequences for your actions.
Potberry tells me at the moment he cannot comment on particulars of Messiah's case, but when it comes to Michigan State Representative Cynthia Neely's push for Messiah's law, she tells me she's still actively working to move it forward. She released this statement to us saying, in part, "This law is designed to protect our children and enhance the value of lives by increasing the punishment for those who are targeting individuals with drive-by shootings while families are present. We continue to do everything we can to protect our children," end quote. Messiah's family tells me they didn't know anything about the case when it was going through the one-man grand jury. They say now that it has started over, they're hoping for answers.
And I would like to hear it. I would like to hear why my grandson died.
Prosecutor David Layton tells me every single one of the cases they used a one-man grand jury to issue indictments have been dismissed in the county. Most of the cases have had their charges refiled in district courts, but there was some exceptions.
The only reason we did not refile anything that came out of the one-man grand jury was because the witnesses just either disappeared or didn't want to cooperate.
Prosecutor Layton paused all cases involving one-man grand juries after the Michigan Supreme Court heard arguments in the Flint water crisis cases in May. Layton tells me it took about 90 days from the decision by the state's top court for them in the prosecutor's office to decide to refile these charges in district court. He says they have been using one-man grand juries for years.
I first learned about them in talking with Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy. She had an assistant who was lecturing on it at a National District Attorney's meeting.
Wayne County Prosecutor Kim Worthy saying in a press conference on Wednesday that prosecutors' offices across the state of Michigan have used one-man grand juries since it was allowed to be used starting in 1917 in the state.
Including mine. It has mainly been used for highly sensitive, for highly dangerous type cases. Mainly cases where witnesses were afraid to come forward because literally their lives were on the line.
That was one of the reasons Genesee County prosecutor used the method of indicting people. One-man grand juries bypass preliminary examinations in district court, something that is procedural in typical cases.
So why not just use that method all along? If it was there to begin with, why use? Did this create more work for your office?
Well, nobody ever challenged the one-man grand jury before. I mean, it's been used for many years, on and off, different parts of the state for different reasons. It never got challenged until the Flint water cases, and then the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional.
With them dismissing all of the cases and refiling the charges for most of them, it duplicated the process for the prosecutor's office. Prosecutor Layton tells me it did create more work for his office. Right now, we are working on numbers on how many were refiled cases and how many cases were dismissed. I'm waiting to hear back from the prosecutor's office on that.